All right. Welcome to the Michigan Watercolor event today. We call it Art Talk. It's something that we seem to be scheduling on a regular basis. In fact, we've got three or four more presentations this year that I've already lined up. My name's Rocco Pisto. I am the current Michigan Watercolor Society president, and just trying to bring you an opportunity to meet our artists, to meet our members, and to meet people that at least that I find interesting, that I think you may as well. And today we have Belinda McGuire, who's a board member as well. She's been a painter for a long time. She's professor emeritus at the Washtenaw Community College, and she's got a course that she teaches there today, and decided that I talked to her about it, and she said, I can share that with our members. And I said, that would be outstanding. So Belinda, take it away.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, they're waving because they're muted.
Oh, okay.
We're
That's
all
cool.
shaking our heads.
Oh, shaking your heads. Okay. All I see is my slide. Okay. I'm going to present through this, and it's given points in time. Rocky, I'm going to have you unmute the mics because I want them to participate at different points in time. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. I am professor emeritus at Washtenaw Community College. I taught there, well, 30 years full time, and with the emeritus teaching probably 33. So I haven't learned not to stop teaching yet. My background is I have a master's in education curriculum, a master's in studio art, and a master's in science in historic preservation and geography. So I always make the joke that I'm trained like the Royals without the bankroll. So, but it's given me a broad background. The course that I'm going to present to you is the front part of it. There's certain parts of it that I will be going to more time on this class, but I only have an hour. So I'm going to go view the beginning and the introduction, and I'm going to explain to you what art is from a curator, art historian point of view. Now, I thought this was valuable to Rocky. Earlier this summer, I entered some paintings into a show in upstate New York. And it was a very stiff competition, over 600 entries, only 50 were taken. It was up in the Hudson area of New York. And so I was given a response that I was, was not invited. It's basically my work was not accepted. But exciting about it was the best rejection I ever got. That work was curated by the head curator of the Albright Knox Museum in Buffalo, New York. And I went, whoa, that's a lady who knows what she wants in art and knows what she wants to show. So I was really excited to be actually turned down. Would have been more excited if I gotten in, but she knows what she wants in a show. She's curating it. So let's go through this and let's talk about what art is. Okay. All right, come on, you wake up keyboard. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, got it. I think my machine's a little bit hung up here. All right, let's go over here, next slide. Okay, so what is art? Who makes art? People. Anyone who looks at something, it is, but from a formal point of view, art has art is something that has a human element to it. In other words, a human created it. Created it with aesthetic intent. Now we often get into conversations where people will say, oh, wow, look at that beautiful sunset or that sunrise. That's no, that's a natural element. Natural elements and forms, beautiful mountains, as you look at them, are not art because human hand did not have it into it. Art also has to be original. Has to be an original piece of work. It could be any media. It could be painting. It could be sculpture. It could be collage. It could be fiberglass, but it has to be original. And the art must demonstrate a level of craftsmanship, skill. We get into this conversation, craftsmanship versus mass production. Often the pottery people in ceramics have felt left out, but today that's a little different. Craftsmanship, was it done by the human hand versus something done by a machine? Art is something that's done with craftsmanship. Third thing that makes art is the concept of the artist's intent as defined by the artist and or the viewer. Now, what does that mean? Well, the artist might have created a piece of artwork with his intent and what he saw it meant, what its meaning was, but over time, with a different viewer, that intent may change. The last thing about art is always designed to challenge the viewer's concept of the art, the world, and things around the viewer. Okay, in the past, we're going to talk a little bit about historic, modern, and contemporary views of art. Historically, art was considered just painting and sculpture. Those were the early sources of art. That was known in the past as high art. In the modern era, art started to encompass such medias as decorative art, furniture, architecture, textiles, ceramics, books, photography, and cartoons. And that was quite a hill for photography to climb. Pablo Picasso said, well, if you want something exact, just take a picture of it, which sort of denigrated photography. But with photography today, most photographers, fine art photographers, shoot what they see in their mind, and they edit that photograph to reflect what their intent and what they saw in that mind when they viewed it. Photography is very much a fine arts medium, and the same thing goes with cartoons. Today, though, in the 21st century, the current view of art is that it encompasses all of the digital forms, in some cases tattoos, fashion design, if they are original, not copied. They're not tattooing someone else's design. If it's their own design, it could be art. And it also includes performance art, drama. One thing that comes to mind is Yoko Ono's presentation. Maybe back in late 60s and 70s, that was it was considered not art, but today that would be considered performance art. Okay, so let's look at these two pictures. The man on the left is viewing a sunrise. Would you consider that art? Yes, to shake your heads.
Sure. No.
Maybe. No, the man viewing it, no, that's not art. He's just looking at it. These are all natural events. The sun comes up on its own, does its own thing, the mist comes and goes. That is a natural event. Now let's look at the image on the right. That's Ansel Adams' work. This was taken out in Yosemite. This is called Cathedral Peaks and Lakes. That is a gelatin silver print. The dramatic values, the highs and the lows and the values, he achieved that by using a ruby lift lens in front of his camera lens. That is art. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Okay, so just going out there and look, and oftentimes when I'm painting, I'm always looking for a good dramatic sky, and I go out and photograph them. Well, that's my study images. That's not art. I'm going to use them to put them in my painting. How they come out in the painting might be different. So the image on the right is art. Ansel Adams' beautiful gelatin silver prints. Okay, look at these two images, and the next can be open. Here we have on the left a typical classroom furniture. Actually, this is from really in Mexico. Is the furniture art? Well, no. I'm going to tell you it's not, because that furniture was designed for a functional reason. So we wouldn't consider that art. Well, how about on the right, the Resolute desk? Do you consider that art? The answer is yes.
Sure.
It falls under the modern era. The Resolute desk was commissioned in 1880 by Queen Victoria. as a gift to the United States American president at that time, which was Rutherford B. Hayes. The desk was constructed and hand carved of wood that was taken from one of the first ships to sail to the Antarctica. So it has quite historical context to it, but at the same time, the craftsmanship, all hand carved. And this, of course, has President Obama sitting there. But as you well know, if you go back to the Kennedy era, this little panel right here on the desk opens up, and that's where we saw the image of JFK Jr. climbing through when he was a little guy. Okay. Art on the left or not art? Not a most attractive photograph, is it? Well, those are urinals in a public bath design. The urinals are designed for function, obviously to be used, and they're installed in accordance with the plumbing code for that state or municipality. How about on the right? Is that art?
Yes.
Yes, Marcel Duchamp. Okay, art can be made from taking found objects and reinterpreting them in a different way. And that's what Marcel Duchamp has done. Now, he calls this piece and titles it Fountain. Now, being married to a commercial plumber, I would have a hard time convincing him that. But let's understand a little bit about Marcel Duchamp. There he is. He was a French-American painter and sculptor. He had quite a lifespan. He was part of the Dadaism period. Dadaism fell between Cubism and Surrealism. Let me give you an exact period of time. It was just after World War I, okay? And Dadaism was a response to social and the cultural upheaval of World War I, the horrors of the war. People were horrified by what man invented, these horrible weapons, the mustard gas, so on and so forth. And Dadaism is considered it was Western Europe and New York movement, and it was from the period of 1915 to 1923. Characteristics of Dadaism, made from found objects, nonsensical, spontaneous. At that point, the artists were revolting again against the academies, in that there was the belief that art is created at the will of the artist. It doesn't have to follow these constrictive guidelines. So if we go back after I've discussed Dadaism, remember, made from found objects, nonsensical, spontaneous. I would say that Marcel Duchamp's interpretation of the fountain fits those categories, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say so too. So let's play a little bit more. How about this? Art or not art? Remember, the image on the left is the real Mona Lisa as displayed in the Louvre Museum. The Mona Lisa really was not that important of a painting until it was stolen in 1911 by Vincent Peruggi. He stole it. He was a worker. He actually helped hang the painting and secure it, so he knew how to take it down, and he stole it in 1911. And because it was stolen, it became such a scandal in Paris. People would show up just to see where it was hung. The painting was recovered undamaged. His reason for taking it is he was obviously Italian, and he felt that the Mona Lisa belonged in Italy. But the truth of the matter is, Leonardo da Vinci lived in Paris. He died in and around 1519. He never gave his painting to the client who commissioned it. And so when he died, it was given to the government of France and ended up in the Louvre. Now, so that one's art, definitely. Handcrafted, has artistic significance. It has painting significance. We'll talk about its technique a little bit later. How about the image in the center? Is that art?
No.
No. Why not, Rocky?
It's a print or a photograph of the original artwork.
Absolutely. It's mass produced. It's not original. Okay, now I'm going to trick you on the image on the right. Is that art?
I think so,
And why?
because it's another artist's interpretation of the Mona Lisa. And I don't know if that was Dolly or somebody that
That was Marcel Duchamp.
wasn't. Okay.
That's yes, and that's correct. So yes, it is art. It's his reinterpretation of another art piece. Okay. All right. All right. Now we look at art with the four, we call them the four aspects of art, and we analyze art at the curators and the art historians and architectural historians as well. We analyze it based on four aspects. Some aspects are pretty objective and straightforward, and we could all agree on the answers. And some of them, we would call that objective. And some of them are subjective. Let's talk about the first one, form. In analyzing art, this aspect is objective. These answers should be agreed upon by all, and you can get those answers by simply just looking at it. Is it a sculpture? Is it made out of metal? Is it, what color is it? Is it an oil painting? Who painted? You know, that sort of stuff. That's what we call another aspect of form. Context. Context is another objective part of the art. Questions like, who painted it? Who commissioned it? How much did it cost? Okay. There, you know, those things you can find by simply looking up the piece of art, knowing when it was painted, who painted it, who it was commissioned for. That's what we call contextual analysis, really, of the art. You're doing to do your research. Function. What is the purpose of art? Now, what was the purpose? What was the original artist's intent? Now you're getting into interpretation. Now you're getting into the subjective form of understanding art. The function of art over time can change as we move into a different era and you have different people of a different period of time interpreting. It also can change if you pick up the art, particularly a sculpture, and you move it to a different spot. Then the context of the function of the art may change. Content and meaning. Content and meaning is the subject. What is the subject of the art? And what is the artist's aesthetic intent? Again, this is another part of the aspect of art that can be subjective and can evolve over time. Let's take a look at an example. I love this example. Is a sculpture. It's very near and dear to me. It's in the gardens as you walk up to the student center at Washtenaw Community College. Well, let's ask some questions about it. If you were looking at it, let's talk about form. Well, what is its shape? What is its color? What is its texture? How tall is it? What is the style or mode of representation? What would you say? I think we all would agree that they're what, rectangular forms? We would all say it looks pretty tall. I can tell you from being there, it's 22 feet. Wow. It's the texture of it's rough. It's brown. It actually looks rusty. Looking at it with this how simple it is in form, I would say it's part of the minimalist period of art. Would everybody agree?
Yep.
Yeah, but we'll find more about it. And the answer, it is. It is. Okay. Okay. Context. Who is the artist? How much did it cost? Who commissioned it? How long has it been there? What is it made of? Is the artist affiliated with the college? What time period was the sculpture made? These are all things we can look up and should look up. I can tell you that the artist is Paul Zinyan. Paul Zinian was affiliated with not only the University of Michigan, but he was also affiliated with Washtenaw Community College. The college commissioned it. How much did it cost? I'd have to go look that up. I don't remember. How long has it been there? It's been there since the 80s. The college campus opened in 1968. College opened a little earlier than that, but the campus didn't open until 68, but it's been there since the 80s. So what time period was it made? It was made in the 80s. Minimalism was from the mid 60s or the 60s through the mid 70s. But I would think, given Paul Zinian's age at that time, he was heavily influenced by that. So these are things, again, we can get by looking at it. We can get it by doing some homework. Interesting fact about this sculpture is one of the big programs at Washtenaw Community College is the welding program. And it was the welding department and the students who welded those forms together. So although commissioned and designed by Paul Zinian, the students contribute to that sculpture, which makes it very special. So those are, do you understand what I mean by context? Those backgrounds. Okay, function. Okay, what is the purpose of the sculpture? Now, when I ask my students that, they'll go, wow, I don't know. What is that? Two books leaning on each other? What is that? Two boxes? I don't know. And some of them interpret it as being, well, the tall one is the faculty and the smaller one is the students, and they lean on each other and it's codependence. I've heard that out of my students. And I like that interpretation. I have no problem with that. The title of the piece is called The Gateless Gate. And from the original philosophy and mission of the college is we were an open door school. And as you walk into that sculpture, and you can walk between them, it's not going to fall on you. The opening is bigger going in towards the college than coming out. When you go and walk out and walk away from the college, the opening is smaller, done by design. Very clever use of negative space. And basically the philosophy that Mr. Zinian was reflecting is that this was the gateless gate. We were open door college. It didn't matter what your grade point was in high school. We weren't prejudging you. The doors were open to you. And I can tell you from over 30 years, it made teaching very interesting. I could have a high school kid, I could have a Cornell graduate, I could have a 75-year-old in my classroom, and it was a mixture therein and above because we are an open door school. So if you, like I said, as you walk out, the opening is smaller. And you know, Rocky, you live in Ann Arbor, you should go there and walk through it and walk back.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, you should do that. You would see the difference. And the reason why it closes in as you go out is we've closed the learning gap. People leave more knowledgeable. So that gap between people knowing things and not going is closed. And that's why as you walk through it, it's smaller. It's a very clever sculpture. It is a very simple sculpture. And of course, I walked past it for many, many years and still do. So that, you see what I mean by function and interpretation? Over time, people see it as students leaning on each other. For me, who have been there a long time, understand that it's the open door policy. Okay. Cool. Question. Okay, the subject. Well, the subject are two books. Like I said, that changes. The deeper meaning and significance of the artwork is the message the art meant to convey. We've talked about that a little bit. The meaning would change over time with a different viewer, a different era, changes in the college policy, or a change in the location. If I were to pick that sculpture up and move it over to St. Joseph's Hospital campus, I would think it would have a very different interpretation, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because it's been taken out of context. So content and meaning. So the four aspects of art to review are form. What does it look like? The things that we can get from looking at it. Context, things we can go find out about it by looking it up. And then content and meaning and function. And content and meaning and function can kind of be lumped together. But function is really, you want to think about it as being the purpose, the original purpose of the art. And that was to be on display for Washtenaw Community College, was to display the open door policy of that campus. Take a walk through that, you'll find it interesting. Okay, this is one of my favorite subjects. What is the value of art? Well, artistic value, famous artists, materials used. A marble sculpture is worth a fortune just in its material alone. A bronze sculpture is worth a fortune just in its material alone, but also tied to the same artist. Monetary, tied to a famous artist or an event, or it's very popular, or it's very unique or rare, that can bring monetary. Historical value, tied to a famous person or an event. Okay. Sentimental value, personal family values or community values. Earlier this year, I released a restoration of a mid-century modern desk from the 1965. It was a knockoff of United Furniture. When my husband saw it, he thought it was a piece of junk. I said, this lady loves mid-century modern and she loves this. So it had sentimental values. So I restored it back to its historic finish, repaired the things that were wrong, and sent it on its way. Spiritual and religious, associated with a significant religious event. We don't have to look too hard in the history of art to see all the religious paintings and sculptures that were tied to the birth and death of Jesus. Cultural and community, associated with a major cultural or community event. Let's look at some examples. Mona Lisa, there she is. If you had to check off, I hope your mics are on, would you say that has artistic value?
Yeah. I'll unmute everybody.
Okay.
Unmute all.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we all unmuted?
Allow.
Oh, allow, yes.
There you go. Now everybody can click their button.
No, they can click their mute to get off if they want to comment.
What was the question?
I lost Belinda.
No.
Belinda, come back. Unmute yourself, Belinda.
Okay, I did.
Okay, good.
Can everybody hear me? Does this Mona Lisa painting have artistic value? Absolutely, yes. Oh my goodness. That's Leonardo da Vinci. Also, the style of painting, which was called sfumato, S-F-M-U-A-T-O, was a style of blurry painting that gives it artistic value. Other things that give it artistic value is the pose. This was an unusual pose. It's sort of a three-quarter turn. And the fact that she's looking out at the viewer, she's challenging the viewer. This was a new step in portrait painting. Does it have historic value? Yes. Comes from the Renaissance area. Does it have sentimental value? Well, it does to the people of Paris after it got stolen, certainly. Spirit religious, maybe not. Monetary, I think it goes for $350 million. I'd say it's got monetary value. Cultural and community, not so much. You see, a piece of art doesn't have to meet all of that criteria. It just has to have some of it. Let's look at the next piece. Oh, hang on here. Oh, I love this painting. Okay, folks, tell me, does it have artistic value?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyone familiar with Gustav Klimt's work?
See many pieces in Vienna.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, it does. This is an oil painting, but it's inlaid with gold and silver. And of course, Gustav Klimt was a famous artist of that period of time. This painting was done between 1907 and 1912. Yeah, this painting is of a woman called Odile Bloch-Bauer. She was a socialite in Vienna, Austria. And when she died, she donated the painting to the Vienna Museum. Okay, second question, does it have historic value?
Eh,
I think it does. Back in that
Oh.
era, I mean, it symbolized where the wealthy was coming through during that time.
Okay, that's true.
Before World War One. Other than that, I don't remember.
Okay, the historic value behind this, first and foremost, again, this would require this. You're getting into the contextual part of art. You would have to do your homework. This painting, first of all, Gustav Klimt was absolutely hated by the Nazis. Even though this painting is well before World War II, the rise of Hitler was much before 1941. It was in the 30s, and Adolf Hitler absolutely hated his work. What makes it historically significant is that the Nazis during World War II, they had a hit list of art they wanted to take and collect. Adolf Hitler wanted to be an artist. He was rejected 3 times by the Academy, and he was really bent out of shape over that, and it sort of fed into his other hysteria that he was known to have. So this painting was stolen. It was stolen from the Vienna Museum, and a lot of paintings were stolen during World War II, and this one fortunately was recovered. And by the rules, some of the paintings were never recovered, and the American soldiers played a really interesting role in this. A lot of paintings of this quality were taken off their frames, rolled up because they were canvases, put in what they call artillery cans, which were long and thin, and then they were shipped out of the country. That's how a lot of it ended up in New York. And the American soldiers, a group of them, went on a mission to recover this art. They were known as the Monuments Men.
Right.
There's a movie out on that. Okay. There's also a movie out called Women in Gold. Okay. And you should see that one. That's well worth your time. So, by the rules of the convention, the Nazis were to return all the art stolen by the Nazis, were returned to the original owners, which in this case was the Bloch-Bauer family. And so her niece, Maria Altman, sued the Vienna Museum for that painting. And it was quite a lawsuit. And she eventually won. And she lived in Los Angeles at the time, and she was given the painting back. And then she turned around and sold it to the Los Angeles Museum of Art, which broke the Vienna Museum of Art's heart. This is on display in Los Angeles. And the criteria when she sold it to the museum is that this painting would always be on display. And so if you go to the Los Angeles Museum of Art, you will see this one. So yes, it has significant historic value because it was stolen by the Nazis. Sentimental value to the family. Spiritual, religious, I would say no. Monetary, yes, it's worth a lot of money. How about community and cultural? Cultural, I think, Rocky, you touched on that when you talked about it reflected how the wealthy in Europe lived back then. What do you say?
Yeah, that was the commentary. I think that they were, again, these were commissions.
Yes.
So this is how he made his living and developed, his style, and people loved it at the time. And plus,
Right.
Some of these women were more than just models to him as well.
Well, she was married. Adele was. Her
Okay.
husband commissioned this painting. Her husband's name was Ferdinand. Okay. All right. What is the value of this art? This is the Abraham Lincoln sculpture found in the Lincoln Memorial. It's made out of marble. It was carved between 1916, 1920, and we would call this form of sculpture subtractive process because you're removing material when you're carving. The artist is Daniel Chester French. Okay, folks, artistic value?
Yep.
Absolutely. The craftsmanship, it's original, it's marble. Oh, absolutely gorgeous. How about historic value?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's Abraham Lincoln. He reunited the United States and he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, one of our four main documents of freedom here in the United States. Sentimental value,
Yeah,
and how so?
to people in the United States.
Absolutely.
It's a
And
symbol.
it's a symbol, absolutely. Spiritual? I'd have to think about that one. Monetary? Oh, of course. Absolutely. I don't know what that's valued at because I don't think it's been valued. But how about cultural and community?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Well, it's a symbol of freedom, and that he helped, change the world, actually, or at least in our country. So, I mean, from a
Right.
cultural community.
Well,
It's been a
for the
backdrop.
African Americans, it's yes, there you go. That's the words I was looking for. It was a backdrop for Martin Luther King and the civil rights fight in the 1960s. His I Had a Dream speech.
Right.
Yeah.
The Abraham Lincoln is very, very important to the African American community. And they often have demonstrated there at the feet of Abraham Lincoln because he freed them. He pushed through the 13th Amendment. Okay, so yeah, a sculpture that's for commemorative purposes takes on all kinds of value, doesn't it? Okay. This is one of my favorite ones. It blows people's minds. I'll tell you who it is. If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't recognize it. But that is George Washington. And it was, I don't know who the sculpture was, it's unknown, but it was gifted by Schubel Bell. He's quite a historical character. He's not the artist, though. And it was dated 1855. And I will tell you that this sculpture is located in the Old North Church in Boston. And I've been there to see this one. So, does it have artistic value?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a beautiful sculpture. It's marble. Yeah. Does it have historic value? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you see the sign on the left right here, this is General Lafayette, a French general who served in the Revolutionary War with George Washington. Of course, George Washington died in 1799. General Lafayette came to see it. The bust was installed in 1850, and he came to see it in 1824. And he looked at it and says, "Yep, that's what the man looked like. I knew him more like that than any other portrait." Now, if you pull out a dollar bill out of your wallet, does George Washington look like that? No. The image of George Washington on the dollar bill is he's been stylized. If you read about George Washington, and I do a lot of reading, Joe J. Ellis, one of our top American historians, described him as a beast of a man. He was big for his period. He had a heavy brow. He was born with bad teeth. He had 10 sets of wood teeth, and he intimidated the British. Now, looking at him on the dollar bill, he looks much more older and stylized, and you don't pick up that heavy brow. But believe me, in historical context, he frightened the British with his appearance and his overall size. So from a historic point of view, it's a very accurate representation of what George Washington looked like. Sentimental? Oh, very important to the people of Boston. They have that. It's very important to them. Spiritual? Well, George Washington wasn't known to be overly religious. I believe the Old North Church is Episcopalian, and he was at times affiliated with Episcopalians, but he wasn't known to be overly religious. Monetary, what's it worth? Well, I can tell you, having been there, the docents there will tell you it's priceless. And if you go to the Old North Church, that's the first place they take you. They're so proud of that bust of George Washington. So It's an interesting piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, modes of representation. Now I get back more into the paintings. In our appreciation, we cover all forms of art, but in this presentation, I have mostly paintings and drawings and art sculpture. Modes of representation: representational, abstract, and non-objective art. Let's take a look at examples of that. Oh, would you agree that's representational?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The title of the painting is called First Communion. Now, if you're not familiar with this painting, you're going to flip. Guess who painted that painting? Pablo Picasso in 1896, and he was 14 years old. Wow, that's a heck of a painter, isn't it? That's Picasso's painting when he was 14 years old in 1896. Representational art. Now, here in the Michigan Watercolor Society, if you've seen my work, I had the ones with the pumpkins last year. I'm representational. I would say Rocky is more non-objective.
Unrepresentational.
We'll get to that. Non-objective is what we would say. Okay. All right. So how about this one? Now, what do you see in that painting?
I can see a cat.
That's right. You're right. But everything else is sort of what?
Cubistic.
Yeah. Okay.
Broken up into
This
frames.
painting is called broken up into frames. Absolutely. This painting is called Tiger. It was painted around 1912. The artist, a little known artist, I love his work, is Franz Marc. He's a German expressionist. He was born in 1880 and he died in 1916. He died at the age of 36, too young to die. He was killed in World War I. The Germans put him in, drafted him, and when they realized what they had drafted, by the time they went to get him out, he was already killed. Now, Franz Marc was influenced by Cubism, and he, along with Picasso, started to experiment with it. And what makes abstract art different from non-objective art is you're starting with something like that tiger, and then it is then abstracted or reduced or manipulated. How's that is the term. Franz Marc experimented with color. He saw red as danger, violence. He saw yellow or white as joy, femininity. So he's suggesting that this tiger is a female tiger. He saw blue as spiritual and masculine. So he's beginning to put meaning to a color here. Yet we can still see something that we recognize in there is that cat, or in this case, under Franz Marc, a tiger. So we can interpret it that way. Like I said, the painting was done in 1912, and he's one of the beginnings of early abstract art. Okay. Now everybody should recognize this piece.
Yeah, Kandinsky.
This is Kandinsky, absolutely. This is not objective art. And Kandinsky was in and around those periods as well, although this painting, and again, he's an interesting guy to study. His earlier paintings, all artists over a period of 50 or 60 years begin to evolve in their styles. And this is one of his later paintings done in 1923. He was born in 1866. He died in 1944. Kandinsky exploited the interactions between color and form to create what we called an aesthetic experience to engage sight, sound, and emotions from the public. Kandinsky was very interested and synthesis, which is the, I didn't say that correctly, synthesis or chromathesis. And that is the mixture of sound and color. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Oftentimes when I do, when I'm not teaching, I work on pianos. And oftentimes people ask me, what's the difference between a Steinway and a Yamaha piano in terms of tone? Or we would refer to it as timbre. I will say that a Steinway has a warm, burnt sienna, fall leaf day tonal quality in the third octave. Whereas the Yamahas are bright, think yellow, think high pink, think orange. You know what I'm saying? And Kandinsky had quite an interest in that. Kandinsky was not only, as you can see, a well-trained artist, but Kandinsky also played the piano and cello. So he was a crossover between sound and color, if you will. So this is not objective. This is basically exploration in color and form and line. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Mixed together to make an elegant composition. Okay. Now let's talk about a formal analysis of art. And there's lots of analysis of art. We're going to touch on the formal. And I'll mention the other ones. A formal analysis of art involves looking, and this is what art historians do, and curators do too as well, looking closely and in detail at the work in order to consider how the former elements and principles of art are used to create it and to convey the meaning. And then as a formal analysis, they actually sit down and carefully describe them. If you've ever gone to a retrospect of someone's art and you look at the descriptions of their pieces, that was done through a formal analysis. Elements of art. The elements are on the left, the principles of design are on the right. In a regular class setting where I had more time, we actually go through those elements with different pieces of art and talk about color, talk about form, texture, types of lines, mass, does it have mass or volume? And mass is now how much material there is, motion in time, shape, is it cylindrical, is it square, is it pyramidal? Space, what about the positive and negative space? Positive space being the subject matter that you're working with, the negative space being the background. I'm always concerned about positive and negative space in my paintings. What is the value? Earlier, we saw the picture of Ansel Adams Cathedral in Peak and Lake. That had tremendous values, and it had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, highest of whites, darkest of darks. How much volume does it have? When I talk about volume, I'm thinking in terms of 3D art. Okay, three-dimensional art. Mass, same thing. But mass can also be used and thought of in two-dimensional art. Principles of design. Okay, so the elements are the tools that you, are the things that you pick up to put together. The principles of design are how you arrange things. Is it going to be balanced? Is it going to be symmetrical or asymmetrical? Is there going to be contrast? Is there going to be the highest of highs or the lowest of lows? What are you emphasizing? What's the point? You know, what is the focal point of the painting and what are you emphasizing? Pattern. Is there a pattern to this? Kandinsky had patterns to his work. So did Escher, MC Escher. Proportion. Is it unusually big or is it unusually small? When I think of proportion, Claes Oldenburg and Kuzi van Bruggen's enormous sculptures of everyday objects. Proportion. Rhythm, is there a rhythm to it? Kandinsky had rhythm to his work. The scale. Often when we talk about sculpture, what is the scale? Is it full scale, 2 scale, 4.5 scale? Are the elements unified? Or if they're not unified in unity, is there enough in that painting to get variety? How do you get variety? Well, change your color, change your texture, that sort of stuff. So these are things that we would spend more time on, but I'm just going to review them. Okay. As painters, you're very concerned about form, color, space, value, shape, and in some cases, line and texture. Van Gogh's paintings were all about texture. Okay. Let's do an analysis. This is Pablo Picasso's work. We're just going to do a formal analysis. What can we say? If we had to describe that work.
Abstract.
Absolutely, it's abstract.
Figurative.
We're work figurative. That's correct.
Pointy.
What was that last response?
Pointy.
Pointy. Absolutely. The shapes and forms of these human bodies are almost like shards of glass, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
White.
Yeah, just something that's been broken, jagged edges. What else can we say? Well, there's interesting line work there, isn't there? Some of it's thick, some of it's thin, right?
Right.
What else can we say? Well, the subject matter is quite graphic, right? The title of this painting is Les Demoiselles d'Avion, which is, the prostitutes of the street of Avion in Paris, which is where Picasso often frequented. But what else can we say? I would say there's complementary colors there, aren't there?
Mhm.
Yes.
We have orange and blue, right? When I was taught painting, my painting master said, Belinda, when in trouble, go to the complementaries. I always remember that, and I always keep that in mind when I'm doing a painting. When in trouble, go to the complementaries, right?
And everything,
So what else can we say?
everything is flat on, everything's on the same plane.
Absolutely. There's no perspective there at all, is there? So as we say these things, we can now construct a description as through formal analysis of this painting. We can say that this is a flat representation of three women that have their forms have been abstracted in that they are like jagged, sharp edges described with black and white lines that are a variety of thicknesses that are also angled or have some contour to them, painted primarily in complementary colors with some earth tones, right? And no sense of space. That would be a formal analysis, wouldn't you think?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so. So that's, when you see people writing about that, and let me tell you, that takes a lot of practice. Takes a lot of practice to pick up on those elements and then to be able to accurately describe them. And if you have a show and you have a good curator, they would put together a catalog that would have those in there. Now it would be fun, and I was thinking about doing this, but I didn't get your permission to pull some of the artwork from our website and do the same analysis. It would be fun to do.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, how about this guy? Let's analyze it.
Realistic.
Representational.
Very much so, absolutely. Looks like from an older period, doesn't it? Certainly isn't modern. Okay, what else can we say? Well, it certainly has perspective, doesn't it? As 1 point perspective, because
Mhm.
you're looking into that room. What else could we say?
Well, it's
The
a,
use of complementary colors.
Yep, you have that green and
The
that
red and
red,
the green.
absolute. And we also have a lot of muted earth tones, correct?
a little more natural.
Yeah, natural.
Well,
All right.
it's a subject matter that's interesting too, is, I don't think prior to this, you would paint someone who was pregnant.
Interesting perspective. Look, what's going on in that painting? The man's got his hand up.
I forget.
Okay. Well, this is our.
There's a certain reflection in the back. That mirror is sort of looking back at them.
Yep.
There's that dynamic of kind of time or that element.
Mhm. I agree. And you see there's a dog on the floor and shoes on the floor. And looks like oranges on the windowsill or the table. You see those?
What's paintings of patrons? It's like he's doing portraits of not portraits, but full body figure paintings of patrons.
Absolutely. This is it was a commissioned piece of work. That is correct.
I don't know if that was Vermeer, but it was a Dutch painter, I think.
It is a Dutch painter. You're right. This is Dutch art. That is correct. They're hyper realism back then. That's true. The painter is Van Eyck.
That's right.
And if I had to, I'm just going to stay with the formal elements. We'll back up on these in a moment, and I'll give you some of the rest of it in a moment. But the painter is Van Eyck, and if I were to describe this as a representative patient, oh wow, can't talk today. It's realistic art form. It is a portrait of a man and a woman in what looks to be an interior space like a bedroom, because the drapery and the furniture to the right looks like a bed. And it looks like there is some sort of agreement or a contract going on. And the colors, you have complementary colors in her green robe and red. So there's that contrasting element when you're using contrast. We have 1 point perspective. We see a sense of the outdoors to the left with the window. And his dress its overcoat is an earth tone or a muted brown, but he's wearing a blue like robe. And there's a sense of complementarianess between that and the oranges on the table and the windowsill. And we get the sense that we're looking in on a private event and that the artist is looking back into the mirror and reflecting out. Would you agree?
Yep.
Yes.
Those would be formal elements. What do you think? Okay, so yeah, and so you could get this by seeing this, and you can all agree upon what you see. Now, other forms of analysis: stylistic, iconographic, contextual, religious, historical, social, and biographical, feminist, from a feminist point of view, gender studies. That is a newer one that, as we deal with, is this piece of art based on the gender preference of someone else? Critical race theory, race and critiques. That is, art. You have to remember, art is a response to cultural and historic events. You can't separate either one of them. So they're going to be evaluated and analyzed through those lenses. And actually psychological being, what was the state of mind of the artist when they created that painting? Okay, so if we back up for a minute and we look at Picasso's here, this was done around, this is during his Cubist period, so 1912, 1960. Known to frequent these brothels. Picasso was known to sort of have a love-hate relationship with women. He liked the brothels, but he feared the sexually transmitted diseases, because back then there was no penicillin. Picasso also was this is actually late 1960s, 1920s. He was very interested in African art. That's when Europe was traveling down into Africa. And at the time he made this painting, he had gone to a museum where they had traditional African masks. And so if you look at these women's faces here and here, they're very reflective of African art as found in Africa, not African American, but African art. And so, same thing right here. So, that is sort of a biographical background, an analysis of Pablo Picasso, and of course, his love-hate relationship with women. That would be more of a psychological analysis. And to get that information, you would have to really research him. You'd have to look him up. And, you know, this painting went on display. He was also defying the academies back then, and it was considered horrific. Today, it's considered a wonderful piece of art. Let's look at this one. Now, this was from 1434. This is Jean Van Eyck painting. It is the wedding of Arfinio. He is the man on the left, and his wife is on the right. And this painting, we're going to analyze it from an iconographic point of view, in that this painting is loaded with symbolism. And that's what iconographic is all about. This is symbolism, okay? And so if we go back to that, this was the marriage of Artefino, and he's on the left, he's on the right. The dog in the painting signifies wealth and fidelity at that time. The shoes in the painting signifies fidelity. The oranges on the windowsill, since oranges were very expensive to get in Northern Europe at that time, signify wealth. There is one candle lit in the chandelier for unification, two people becoming one. And if you look down over here to the right about here, there's a statue of Saint Margaret, which is, if you look up her patronage, which is family. And what else can we say about this? He is on the wall to the outside, so his symbolism is his job is to go out and work. He is the breadwinner, he works. She is closer to the interior of the room, which signifies that she is domestic, is her job, and to have. Now, historically, this painting is thought to have been painted after she died. And believe it or not, she is not pregnant. That is the style of clothing in that period that the wealthy women wore. I would have a fit over that, but I'm judging it through a 20th and 21st century eyes, but in 1434, that was the style of furniture. So, but it's thought that this painting was painted in retrospect after she had died. And then, of course, like I said, so these are the iconographic aspects of this painting and how it was sort of analyzed. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and to get the iconographic stuff, you would have to, again, research what did they wear back then. What the Egyptians thought cats were sacred. Well, there was a reason why they thought they were sacred. They kept the rats and mice out of their food. So the cats were really important to the Egyptian. Dogs were fidelity, and you had to have money to own a dog, just as you have to have money today to be able to afford a dog. And so, so that is sort of an analysis of that painting. Does that make sense?
No, that's great, Belinda. If we can, if you're almost wrapped up, that'd be great. In fact,
I am. That was my last slide. So I hope you enjoyed it. And this is, like I said, the front part of the course. So we get people to understand how we look at art, what is art, what are the elements of art, and then from there on, we start exploring the different mediums, and then we explore history. So any questions?
if you can let go of your screen,
How do I do that?
just unshare.
Okay, let me
I
go over
think-
here, to Zoom. And I'll go over here.
There you go. I think you're,
And so you need to come over here. And I need to say your screen sharing. Yeah, stop
I got it.
share. Okay, got
I
that?
got it. Here we go.
Okay.
I got everybody up on the screen. Belinda, that was great. It's nice to be back in college again, at least for an hour. So thank you for that. And
Oh, you're welcome.
this session is recorded, so we'll get it on our Michigan Watercolor YouTube channel, where I keep all our recordings. And, you know, these kind of events, I've got a few more plans so far. February 12th, we got Mark Mahaffey. If you've seen his work, he's great. And he's going to do a demonstration of his artwork. April 9th, we've got Clayton Lewis. And if you don't know who Clayton is, his father was a board member of the Michigan Watercolor Society back in the 90s, taught at University of Michigan. And I forget his first name, but just passed away recently. Vicki did it.
Bill Lewis.
Bill Lewis.
Yeah.
That's right, Bill Lewis. And Vicki did an article in the newsletter on him, and he's going to do a talk on his dad as well as some of his work, and that's in April. And I've left March open because that's our spring meeting. And then in May, Vicki and I went and saw this company called Culture View, and they've got an application that allows you to create a gallery space of your artwork virtually, so that people can go through these rooms and see your artwork hanging in these rooms. And so I'm going to be doing it for my website, and they're going to be talking to us. I can't remember the date in May, but it's either the first or second weekend on a Saturday. We try to schedule these things at 1 o'clock, so there's some consistency. And if you have someone, or if you're interested in sharing what you're doing, we don't have to wait till, you know, once a year when we have a meeting with demonstrations. Let's just keep pushing these Zoom calls right now, especially since we're knee deep in COVID restrictions, and learn from each other and kind of share your thoughts. So if you've got an idea of someone you'd like us to host that you think our members could leverage, just let me know, and we'll get it scheduled. So any questions? No?
No?
Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much, Belinda.
Thanks, Belinda.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So
You're
much.
welcome.